This news just in, it ended up being a very, very interesting and very, very exciting Sunday in Week 17 for the San Francisco 49ers. Going into it, if the Niners beat the Washington Commanders on the road, rebound from that Christmas night debacle against the Baltimore Ravens, combined with the Philadelphia Eagles losing at home to the Arizona Cardinals, the San Francisco 49ers were going to be able to lock up the number one seed in the NFC and get home field advantage so that the NFC playoffs run through Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. Well, the 49ers were able to pull out a win against the Commanders, pitching a second-half shutout, running the football really effectively with that defense in the final 30 minutes, playing extraordinarily well with 2 interceptions of Sam Howell, one for Charvarius Ward, the other for Deommodore Lenoir, and Kyler Murray and the Cardinals ran up and down the field against the Eagles to win that game 35-31. So breaking news, the 49ers just officially clinched the number one seed in the NFC. Your final score, as I said, from FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, 27-10. Brock Purdy, a very efficient game, 22-28, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Elijah Mitchell got a lot of action in this game, and I thought it was his best game since maybe 2021 with all of the injuries that he suffered. He ran it 17 times for 80 yards and a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey was held out of this game because he was dealing with a calf issue. And we're going to continue to monitor that calf injury for McCaffrey, who had a really good game up until he went out. He ran it 14 times for 64 yards. 13 of those carries came in the first half. And receiving-wise, he had 4 grabs for 27 yards. He did keep his helmet on. He was working on that calf throughout that second half, but I think Kyle Shanahan just wanted to keep Christian McCaffrey off the field for precautionary reasons. And it worked out pretty well because now the Niners can take off next week, or at least rest some of their significant players against a Rams team that is now 9-7, just beat the Giants on a missed field goal from Mason Crosby, and the Rams are now fighting for one of those wild card spots. They're pretty much in the playoffs, no doubt about it, and they become a pretty scary team as we highlighted on the show this past week. And for the Niners to go up against a Rams team, if they needed to win, knowing that maybe the Niners would have to play the Rams again in the playoffs, and you're having to kind of show what you prefer to do on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, it's kind of a disadvantage for San Francisco. But now the Niners don't have to reveal anything in this game against the Rams, and they can get ready for the NFL playoffs. Before we continue to move forward, thanks to everybody who tuned into our watch party. We surpassed 107,000 subscribers, and if you're looking for daily coverage of the Niners, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. San Francisco getting home field advantage in the NFC playoffs for the first time since 2019, when they ended up making it to the Super Bowl and lost that fourth quarter lead to the Kansas City Chiefs. Offensively, thought it was a good bounce-back rebound performance from what happened against the Ravens last week. They did not turn the football over once. The only time that the Niners turned it over was on a turnover on downs late in the fourth quarter when they went for it from about the 2-yard line and Elijah Mitchell got stuffed. But to have a clean sheet here, really important for the Niners and for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy had his worst game as a pro against the number one defense in the NFL. He looked like he was seeing some ghosts, and some of the interceptions were unlucky. If he let that linger, that would have been bad. But Brock Purdy didn't let it linger. And I thought that Brock Purdy was very efficient with the football. He was making quick decisions. He made an unbelievable play. Tony Romo, Fran Tarkenton, Patrick Mahomes-esque, where he kind of twirled out of the pocket, rolled to his right, threw across his body to Brandon Ayuk, a ridiculous highlight-worthy play. And with Purdy throwing for 230 yards today, Week 17, December 31st, New Year's Eve of 2023, he set the record for the most passing yards in franchise history. A franchise that has seen Joe Montana and Steve Young put up insane numbers and win Super Bowls, and Brock Purdy was able to surpass Jeff Garcia, who's in second place now, and Steve Young, who's now in third place. The offensive numbers, 408 total yards, 6 yards per play for the Niners. Purdy, that efficient 22 of 28. This became a very run-heavy game for the Niners, even though the Commanders were without their top two corners on the outside. 39 carries, 184 yards. That was good for 4.7 yards per pop. Love the no turnovers here with that clean sheet, because in the NFC, I think the only team that can beat San Francisco are themselves. And then time of possession, Niners able to pretty much dominate that 38 minutes. Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries and 14 carries respectively. And I thought it was really good to see Elijah Mitchell finally return to form. As for this Niners defense, they gave up those 7 straight scoring drives to the Ravens last week. I wasn't hitting the panic button with Purdy. I wasn't hitting the panic button with this defense, because if you look back at the context of what happened with the Niners defense, the Ravens were taking over around midfield. And to stop Lamar Jackson, who had 5 more touchdowns in a blowout win over the Dolphins on a short field, that's a tall test. Total offense, Niners giving up just 225 yards. Jacoby Brissett not playing because of a hamstring injury. Sam Howell did 5 yards per play. Sam Howell, 17 of 28 for 163. And then the Commanders only ran it 14 times for 62 yards. There was one explosive play, really, to Terry McLaurin. That was about it. And the Niners able to win the turnover battle. After they were -5 in the turnover battle last week, they're +2 today. Today's postgame show, by the way, is sponsored by PrizePicks. Get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS. Largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America. And you pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats. And this is easy and exciting daily fantasy sports. And for my selections here today, you don't have to get all of your picks right. I went with the 6 picker, and I didn't get all of them right, but you don't have to get all of them right in order for you to win real money. And you can win up to 25 times your money. So Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy, both went more than 49.5 receiving yards and 224.5 passing yards. Chase Young didn't have a sack, and Christian McCaffrey got injured. There's also injury insurance on these. So he did not have more than a half touchdown, but I had Terry McLaurin, more than 39.5 receiving yards, and Brian Robinson, 56.5 more total yards. So here I went 4 out of 6. That's pretty damn good. Sign up today, prizepicks.com/CLNS, and use the code CLNS. So you continue to talk about this game for San Francisco. It was good for the Niners to come out of this relatively unscathed as far as injuries. I think that if this game were a little bit closer, Christian McCaffrey probably would have been able to come back with what looked to be a calf injury that the Niners were working on. And then you kind of look at what happened across the entire NFC this weekend and today. The Philadelphia Eagles don't seem to be a threat because they're not consistent enough as a football team. And since losing to the Niners in Week 13, Philadelphia is now 1-3. And they might drop all the way to the 5th seed. And they might have to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. And you don't have to worry about Philadelphia now getting home field advantage. And that road to the 2nd seed becomes a lot harder for the Eagles as well. And then you look at that Cowboys-Lions game on Saturday night. A thriller, came down to the wire, very controversial ending with how it ended with the ineligible receiver on the 2-point play. The officiating crew said that Taylor Decker did not report. He clearly did because he went up to the official. Whatever. Lions lose. Cowboys escape. Despite the win, Mike McCarthy's clock management continues to be horrendous and awful and terrible. So you have that, and those other 2 teams seem to be the other threats, if you want to say that, in the NFC. Cowboys are vulnerable, and the Niners beat them 42-10 earlier this year, and the Lions' defense is not good, and Jared Goff having to go to Levi's Stadium and winning in a playoff game, I don't envision that scenario happening. A team that you have to look out for is certainly the Los Angeles Rams, but they travel across the country, and they should have lost to the New York Giants if it wasn't for that Mason Crosby missed field goal. So this is kind of the best case scenario for San Francisco this weekend and today. Shanahan said on McCaffrey, quote, "We think that he's going to be all right." So that's good news for the Niners moving forward. And also, you look ahead, right? And you think about some of the players who could use some time to heal up. More time for Eric Armstead to heal with the plantar fasciitis and the knee injury. More time for Christian McCaffrey. Let's say 2 weeks for him to freshen up. And even if you were to finish this game out and were to not get injured, leads the NFL in rushing yards, leads the NFL in carries, closing in on 2,000 all-purpose yards. You didn't really want to have to use him in a Week 18 game that wasn't meaningful. And he's got so many carries and so many touches to his name this year. You allow him some more time to get right. And then Aaron Banks with the turf toe. Yes, he played against Washington, but now you can afford to sit him. And now this whole team, which has played a lot of football the last couple of years, 3 NFC Championship games over the last 4 years, they're run down a little bit, allows the Niners to rest up. And they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the divisional round of the playoffs, depending on who they play and regardless of who they play. So the San Francisco 49ers in this game able to win 27-10. They get the home field advantage. They get the number 1 seed. Brock Purdy sets the franchise record for the most receiving yards in franchise history. Some defensive tallies before we wrap up. Dre Greenlaw, 10 tackles. Fred Warner with 6. Charvarius Ward, 4 tackles, a TFL, a pass breakup, and an interception. He really might be an all-pro this year. Nick Bosa, 2 tackles for loss and 2 quarterback hits. The only sack that the Niners were able to get was by Clelin Ferrell, who I said before the year, I thought that he was going to be able to have a breakout campaign as a backup defensive lineman. 3.5 sacks, you'll take that from a backup depth player. So make sure you subscribe to the show. New Year's Eve. Thanks to everybody who spent it with us here on the 49ers Report. We'll have a video coming out on New Year's Day as well. San Francisco clinching the number 1 seed, 27-10 victors over the Commanders.